All right, there we go.
It's the red button.
Yeah. All right. I'd like to reiterate my thanks to everyone for joining this evening. This is a discussion of a challenge that we have before us at our SAREXs. So it's not so much a presentation, even though it may look like one. Do encourage everyone to participate as needed. And if you are not talking, we do ask that you please mute yourself so that we don't hear your dogs barking and the TV on and stuff like that. If you want to ask a question or contribute, if you would please raise your hand. There's a little hand icon at the bottom of the screen. You click that and it makes a noise, and I'll call on you, and that will just help keep things a little bit more orderly than they might otherwise be. Just like that. Ginger, did you mean to raise your hand? If you're talking, you're still muted. Okay, we'll move on. So, background information. Historically, we have not provided or coordinated meals at a SAREX. This is not something that we've historically done. I'm sure there have been the occasional exercise or mission where food was taken into account, but as a general rule, in the past, we do not traditionally have done this. What this means is that this forces members to bring their own food to an exercise, or it forces people to go out and seek out food, typically at a restaurant. Eating out is expensive, especially if you're eating out multiple times over a weekend. Um, Something else that we're trying to focus on with exercises these days is to make them a full weekend affair and not just a Saturday. This expands the training opportunities to get more people involved, but it also means that some people who may have long travel times could be staying for the entire weekend. And if they're eating out for the entire weekend, that can get really expensive really quickly, especially if you're the type of member who tends to show up at these things on a month to month basis. Some members cannot or prefer not to spend a lot of food. Something else to keep in mind is that cadets tend to travel in groups, and they may only have one or two senior members with them as supervision for the group. So that makes coordinating a large group more difficult, and especially if you're depending on the cadets to bring cash or bring money, and you end up with three or four cadets who forgot or are not able to, then that puts pressure on those senior members or the squadron potentially to pay out of pocket for those members. Um, Typically, also some background information if we do have members, and this is very true of senior members for the most part. If you go out and eat lunch, especially lunch at a restaurant, then most people are going to spend upwards of 2 hours away from the mission base. This could have a huge impact on the mission if those people who are away from the mission base are your mission pilots or your key staff or your ground team leaders, people like that. So what we want to do is try and develop a method that optimizes our training time and lessens the impact on members, and this encourages participation and also makes it easier and a better experience for the members. Some more background information. If asked to, some members will forget to bring food. If asked to, some members will forget to bring payment for food if we are providing food. And then sometimes, if asked to, some members will not repay if food is provided for them. So, what we're trying to get around tonight is just to raise awareness of these issues and also encourage the SAREX planners and the host units to start taking steps and just thinking about these challenges and ways to meet these challenges so that our exercises are a better training experience for the member, and overall we're training a better product as a CAP ground team, air crew, or mission based staff. And we as a wing are ready to respond when we do have missions pop up, real missions, where there could be actual damage or lives on the line. We want to make sure that we're as best prepared as we can be for those situations. So, objectives in doing this: we want to enhance the SAREX participation by providing overnight lodging at no cost to members with long travel times to and from the exercise. Again, since we're doing these things for a full weekend, it does make it worthwhile for more people to come. It provides more opportunities for people to come and exercise on these weekends. But if someone is driving 2, 3, maybe 4 hours, it's just not worth it to them to come for just the day. But it may be worth it to come for the weekend if they have some place to stay. Again, that's free. A lot of our members are we already pay so much money to be a part of CEP. I hate to ask someone to fork over, $100, $200, $300 for a weekend just to come to a SAREX. We want to enhance the training experience of members that are overnighting by coordinating an optional dinner and breakfast meals for them. That's going to save them money, it's going to save them time, and it's going to save them hassle. If we circle back to the large group of cadets, anyone who's tried to take a bunch of teenagers somewhere knows the challenges and getting everyone in the same place or the right place, the right time, and on time. We want to enhance the available SAREX training by coordinating an optional lunch for members. And again, this goes back to it keeps people from having to leave the mission base to go get food and potentially impacting the exercise by doing so. We want the revenue, we want the meal charges that we might charge for food to be revenue neutral. So we don't want to be using this to make a profit off of the membership, and we don't want any unit or member who's providing the food, who's buying the food, to get stuck holding the bag if there's way more food than there are people to eat it, or more importantly, to pay for it. So no wasted food, no wasted money. Also part of our objectives. All right, so how do we do this? Execution. What's the best method for sourcing meals at a SAREX? Well, that's a big fat it depends. Um, Probably the easiest solution is to have it catered. That also happens to be the most expensive. However, unless you can get catering donated, that's the best of both worlds. It's the lowest cost and it's the highest level of service that we can get from a commercial meal provider. There could be a support group doing meal prep at the Crossville SAREX. I think the some of the squadron members' wives put together some grab and go bags for us. It was like a bag of chips, some granola bars, a sandwich, or I think it was a burger maybe. I don't remember exactly. Um, but if you have a support group that can help out with meal prep, that takes part of that load off of the membership. Jason DeMark, your hand is up, sir.
When we did the Dixon SAREX, the Tennessee Rangers are a member of VOAD. Now, I don't know how often we would want to use them, but definitely in real world scenario, I don't know if you were at Dixon, but they actually brought out like their trailer, their support stuff, and they do full on cooking for the meals, and it's all covered as they volunteer very similar to how we do. But they were, I don't know if anyone else here was part of the Dixon SAREX, but they're 100% an option for that, but definitely not one that we would want to overuse necessarily on SAREXs, but worth keeping in our pocket for real world situations.
Yeah, I wasn't there at that one, but I did hear great things about that food source. And again, that was really the best of both worlds. It's free and it required no work or effort from any of us. So barely any resources on a part of CEP to get that. Colonel Borsari.
Yeah, we've also gotten that from the Salvation Army and I think Red Cross. So there are groups out there that are willing to do these, and if we spread it around, uh, we won't be relying too much on any one provider.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to who do we know that would be available and not like Jason said, not overusing that resource. Um, but if we can get someone to donate the food and to serve it and coordinate it for us, that's great. That's the perfect situation. But again, it comes down to the personnel resource that we have of knowing who to call and how to ask without being overburdensome on that group. Grocery shopping has worked in Greenville. David Breedlove took over kind of our food unit leader position, and he did just grocery shopping. And at the overnight lodging facility in Greenville, there was a commercial kitchen available, so he cooked meals for us that weekend, and that worked out great too. That got the cost way down. Groceries are going to be cheaper than catering, unless it's donated, unless it's free. So something else I'd like to do sometime, but we haven't got to yet, is a kind of a bring something to throw on the grill. If we're at some place that has a grill or some kind of self-use cooking facility, we could do that. Kind of a potluck type thing. Ginger, you're still muted if you're talking, Ginger.
Unmute me.
There we go. Okay, I can
I
hear you
was
now.
just saying that food pantries, if you've got a local food pantry, they might be willing to help out too with groceries and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good idea. So every every exercise is different, and it really comes down to your resource availability is time, cost, and personnel. You've regardless of which solution you go with, you've got to have one person, in my opinion, that's coordinating that side of the operation, and I've been calling that a food unit leader, and that's the person that really needs to figure out which solution we're going to go with, which solution is the most appropriate for that exercise, given the time, cost, and personnel resources available. Um, that person needs to figure out who's going to be eating, who needs to be fed, how they're going to be fed, and then also be at least involved in the process of collecting payment for that food if we're going with a member funded option and not donated option. So methods and pitfalls. Potential methods: you can plan food based on registrations. Just look at the sign up list and see who all is signed up, and plan on feeding those people. That certainly has some pitfalls that we'll talk about in a second. You can plan based on a meal specific registration list. So you take your list of signups, and then you say, okay, everyone, you signed up for this exercise. Which meals do you plan on eating at the exercise? Which meals should we plan on providing for you? You can plan food based on sign-ins. So the day of, you can take the sign-in list, and as people sign in, have them indicate if they are going to want lunch, if they're going to need lunch, or they have, that maybe they brought their own food or whatever. They're not planning on being at the exercise that long. Or you can just plan on food based on the head count. It's like, all right, guys, I'm about to go out and grab a bunch of Subway sandwiches. Who all wants to throw in whatever $5 for food? So do it based on the head count. This also comes down to collecting payment, methods on collecting payment. Assuming that the food's not being donated, which is my personal favorite, we can collect payment at prepayment. We can bill them and have, or we can collect payment before the exercise, based on who says they want to be fed. We can collect payment at sign in. We can collect payment at the meal time when the meal is actually served, or we can invoice people after the fact. I've seen all four of those methods used before with varying degrees of success. There's really not a perfect solution that fits every scenario. I think the best we can hope for is just kind of an optimal solution that fits each individual circumstance. So possible pitfalls, both with food plan and then with the collecting payments. Sometimes members sign up, quite often actually, members sign up for these things and they never show up. So if you're buying food based on registration numbers, then you could be buying food for people who were never planning on coming, or may have once planned on coming, but they canceled weeks ago and didn't bother canceling their registration. This can have a huge negative impact financially on the unit or the person that is providing food for the exercise. That this happened a couple of weeks ago in Knoxville. It also happened a few months ago in Greenville, where more money was spent on food, or where the exercise was sourced food for more people than showed up to eat, just because there were so many people who didn't show up. They signed up and didn't show up. The opposite of that problem is you have people show up who didn't register. This doesn't happen as often, but we do still have some people, a handful of people at every exercise, who show up who didn't pre-register. So of course, if you're depending on registration data to do your food planning on, then that's going to throw a monkey wrench in the works too. Some people just opt out of eating. They may have special dietary needs, or they may not like what we're serving, or They may just want to bring their own food, and that's fine too. The meals at these SAREXs, and especially any payment that's collected for these meals, it's very much an optional thing. It's not an activity fee. It's not a requirement to attend. It's just if you want us to make it easier on you and coordinate food for you, then chip in some money, and we'll be happy to do that. But some people, choose not to participate, and that's fine. But we just need to account for that. Special dietary needs. If you're planning on having, I don't know, pizza, and you get someone who's has a gluten allergy, that might not go over so well. So hopefully they tell us about that before they show up and go into anaphylactic shock. But that's something we need to be thinking about, and something that you need to have in your back pocket to plan around if someone does pop up who does have some special dietary needs. We need to be able to accommodate that. Um, Sometimes people don't have cash. Some people don't have credit card. Some people forget to prepay, so they may have been like, "Oh, I wanted to eat, but I forgot to pay. Can I still chip in some money, and can you go include me in the food order or whatever that was ordered 4 days ago?" Refunds could be an issue. Could be a pitfall with prepayments. People who do prepay, they may have to cancel their participation at the last minute and then want their money back. That may or may not be possible. But probably the biggest pitfall in all this, regardless of the situation, is communication. Um, Whatever the plan is going to be for that particular exercise, it needs to be clearly communicated and communicated often to those who are participating, so that everybody's on the same page. Questions or commentaries so far on this slide? There's a lot going on this one. All right, we'll move on. So here is my what I'm going to call generic optimal meal planning and payment method, most of the time. So anyone who has tried to coordinate a ball team banquet or a big family gathering or a church picnic or something like that understands that it can be hard because you don't always know who all is coming, and you want to make sure everybody that shows up gets fed, but you don't want to prepare or buy way more food than you need to. So this is what I believe is the best way to go that fits most situations in Civil Air Patrol. We'll call it the average situation. So the method for this one is meal specific registrations and prepayment. So by meal specific registrations, this is the method I was talking about earlier, where you take the list of people who have signed up for the exercise, and then you query them and be like, hey, you signed up for this day, this night. It looks like you're going to eat or be with us for these meals. Please confirm this, and if so, send us this much money, and that will cover the cost of those meals. Payments made ahead of time, so that we don't get in a situation where we're ordering food for people who don't show up. Yes, it's possible some people may not pay, and that means that they don't get fed. And if that in that situation, perhaps some last minute dispensation can be made, some last minute wrangling, but it's really going to come down to we need good data to make good decisions on. And if we don't have that good data, and people don't tell us that they want to eat and they don't pay us for the food, then there's not a whole lot we can do about it, short of some extraordinary measures. Establish a payment deadline, so that everybody knows we need to have the money by this date, and then that date or that time is based on the procurement needs. If we're hiring a caterer to feed 50 or 100 people, they may need a head count 3 or 4 days, at least 3 or 4 days ahead of time. So, like any work banquet or a wedding or something of that nature, you need to know who's coming, so that your caterer and your commercial food prep people know how many to fix for. If you have someone who wants to show up after the deadline, then sorry, you can show up, but we're not going to have a meal for you. And for that reason, don't issue any payments after the payment. Don't issue any refunds after the payment deadline, just because the money's already effectively gone to the caterer and it's out of our hands, and they've already bought the food or started preparing the food or whatever they do to get this underway. Some advantages to this method is it's easy to coordinate because so much of the work is being done ahead of time. Um, how much money you have to work with is known ahead of time. It reduces the workload during the exercise. You don't have to go around and track everybody down and say, "Hey, are you going to have lunch? Okay, what do you want? Okay, here's how much it costs. Go ahead and pay me, or chip into the hat, or whatever we're doing." That can be a full time job, just figuring out who, if you're doing it the day of, who needs to eat, and have they paid or not, and what do they want to eat. Let's see. Also, another advantage is there's no chance of buying food for no shows. If everyone's pre-registered and prepaid for the food, then then we're not going to be buying food for no one, for someone who was never going to show up anyways. Disadvantages to this method is some members may forget to pay. And again, this is a situation where they show up like, oh yeah, I meant to pay, but I forgot, and at that point, then they just may be out of luck, or you know there may be some people with huge hearts that are willing to take pity on them and help them out. Um, or that could come down to impacting the exercise. If all your mission pilots forgot to pay and they need to go get lunch, well, we're in the situation again where the exercise is shut down because we don't have any pilots. Question from James Duffy. Go ahead, Jim. Jim, you're, if you're talking, you're muted. Okay, Bruce, how about you?
Yeah, I don't know if you're going to cover this or not, Andy. The actual mechanics of the payment. How is payment made? How is it tracked? Does it go into the wing general fund and then gets somebody makes a payment and gets reimbursed, or how is that? How would you think that should work?
Well, um, so this really this really comes down to are we prepaying? Are we paying the day of? I'm sorry. Are we collecting payment before the exercise, during the exercise, or after the exercise? To my knowledge, we've never done prepayment before, but we have done day of, and we have done um, post exercise. So day of is pretty easy. You just collect cash from everybody, and that cash gets deposited into whatever unit's account that's paying for the food. Um, and it goes in Wing Banker, like you said. We've also tried invoicing people. That was a huge pain in the butt. Um, we did this in Crossville for one of the meals where we said, okay, everybody who eats this meal, don't worry about bringing money or anything. We're going to invoice you later. So we had a sign up list at the meal. Then everyone who ate got invoiced, and probably 20% of the people just never paid. We had to go take that money out of those squadron accounts to settle up those invoices. So that was pretty disappointing. And it turns Wing Finance into a collections agency, which isn't really their job. They don't have time for that, and that's not what really they're for. So I'm not really a fan of invoicing after the fact. For prepayment, that's that's I think the solution, the optimal solution. Like I said earlier, we can um, what I'm going with right now is we send them a link to send Wing some money. So that could be a link to a PayPal account. That could be a Venmo name. That some kind of tool or vehicle where we can collect money from somebody who wants to pay us, who wants to give us money, and then they can denote in their payment what it's for, and then I'll talk about in a second how that gets tracked and incorporated that into the exercise. But
Yeah.
something to keep in mind is that we can't. CEP finance regulations prohibit money collected at an activity from being spent on that activity. that might be just a fundraiser. So like you can't, take up donations at a bake sale or a pancake breakfast and then use that money to go out and buy muffins and pancake batter for the fundraiser. So all the income has to reflect in Wing Banker, and all the expenses have to reflect in Wing Banker. So I kind of danced
Yeah,
around your question there.
yeah, we have to remember that we don't have a wing administrator, um, a full-time WA. Ours
Right.
is, our banking is controlled by the wing administrator out of Colorado, and that individual has Colorado plus Kentucky plus Tennessee. Um, and if we collect money and put it into the wing funds, that's going to be a pretty heavy workload for that individual. Just something to think about.
I think it depends on how the money is collected. If people send paper checks, then yes, that's in the mail. That's a huge amount of administrative overhead. If we send them a link for them to electronically send us money, and then it's a pretty easy of someone in Wing Finance to generate a list and send it to the food unit leader of who's paid for whatever SAREX. Colonel Young.
Yeah, I was just going to respond to Bruce and the fact that it might be a burden on the wing administrator doesn't absolve us of the responsibility of putting all the money into the wing account and then spending that money out of the wing account. We can use wing credit cards to buy stuff, but we can't. We have to do that pass through the wing account, no matter who the burden lands on.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. That was just one of the pitfalls that we have to consider is uh, somebody has to manage that money, uh, and right now we don't have a full-time person that does that.
Yeah, I agree. I think we need to automate it as much as possible.
Yes. Yes. Definitely so.
Raise your hand.
Nicole.
Due to the fact that I am one of the people at Wing that checks the mail, if we decide to have them mailed paper checks, which I know some people are willing to do because they don't want to have the expense of credit card processing fees, um, I can use the registration form if there's a place on there that says if they're registered and they're wanting meals, I can do a little checkbox of saying yes, their payment was received for this event. And because I scan everything I receive gets scanned in and sent over to Wing Finance so they can keep up with it. So, I mean, keeping up with paper checks is not a problem.
Ginger, did you have something else?
Dick has.
Okay, a couple of things, Andy. First of all, at the past SAREX, pay as you come seemed to work pretty good. We had 37 people paying at $10 a head. I gave $370 to Major Onks, which he put in the Wing Bank account. I assume that following Monday or so at First Horizon. The other thing is, if you're going to have, I would suggest having a meal by meal sign up. Because due to my physical condition, we usually stay in a motel. These motels offer you a free or part of the bill breakfast, and we'd probably get a supper there. So if you have a breakfast, lunch, and dinner sign up, then you could probably appropriate the cost per meal. Because there are probably going to be some people who would go home. Our squadron commander, for example, went home each day. He ate his lunch meal there, but he paid the full $10. So you're going to have to figure at least if you're going to stay somewhere, perhaps some kind of a dinner meal on the Friday arrival, 3 meals on Saturday, 2 meals on Sunday. So that's
At a minimum.
at a minimum. So that's 7 meals. And that's 7 blocks you should be filling out, not just one block saying you want to eat there.
Because of the fluidity of the activity, you've also got your ground teams coming in and out, your pilots coming in and out. So I would say the noon lunch could work like it did at Crossville, where sandwiches were made and everybody just picked up a bag lunch and took it with them instead of something totally heavy and prepared.
Yeah, we were fortunate that we had enough of Major Abraham's wonderful barbecue for the cadets that were locked in, along with Major Ox and a few other seniors at Wing headquarters. But due to that consideration, they have no ability to get out and go to a restaurant. And some cadets forget to bring even a Friday night evening meal. We had that problem with the cadet basic training in Kingsport.
And they had to order in pizza, I guess.
Yeah, they ordered in pizza to cover it, and you couldn't get a pizza delivery, I don't think, at the wing headquarters. Maybe you can, Nicole can tell me that. But I think a meal by meal part of the registration is what you got to do Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I'm done.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the best. Well, in most situations, let me qualify what I'm saying with this first. I think in most situations, on average, the best way to go is a meal by meal sign up list. And your comment about ground teams not possibly not being there for the noon meal is a very real concern. If the ground team is on a 3 or 4 hour sortie, then they're probably going to want to just grab something on the road while they're out. Um, and again, that comes down to something that's exercise specific. What do the ground teams have planned? Are they going to be in some field location altogether so that we can get meals to them or deliver meals to them, or are they going to be told to bring their own food if they're going to be in the field, or are they going to be on the road? Is stopping at some fast food place the best place to go? That's kind of where it comes back to. Every situation is different, and every exercise is different, and we just need to figure out what works best for that situation. Um, and Knoxville, for Knoxville SAREX a couple of weeks ago, we bought food based on registration data, and took a huge financial hit because we bought one, three, we bought several meals to feed 60 people, and may have had half that many show up. So Dick, you mentioned we collected $370 from the contributions, but that the cost of food was close to 3 times that amount. So we took a huge financial hit because again we bought way more food than we needed. So any other discussion on this slide? Jim, you still got your hand up. Do you have something? You're muted if you're talking, Jim. All right, moving on. So, let me talk about how some functionality I've added to the SAREX Resource Master Sheet. So, if you pull up one of the SAREX Resource Master Sheets, and then look for the FUL tab at the bottom, that's the Food Unit Leader. There's some additional tools built into the spreadsheet that I think will be a big help in helping planning and executing our meal plans. So the first tool is what I'm calling a meal plan and cost analysis. This has a section where you can put the provider in this block here, put how much the cost is per unit, and then how many it feeds. So if we look at this first line here, I've got a Domino's XL pizza, $17.34. It feeds five. Then the spreadsheet does the math for you, and calculates that to a per person cost of $3.47. So that's pretty cheap. For a per person cost, that's pretty cheap. Everyone buying a $17 pizza individually isn't really feasible, but if you can eat on less than $5 per meal, that's pretty good. You have a hard time. Even McDonald's, their average combo meal now is up around $10 per person. So if you can buy stuff in bulk, then the cost per person can get really, really low. Same thing here for McDonald's. Assorted biscuits for breakfast, unit cost $3.19. It feeds one, so that's a per person cost of $3.19. But look at this barbecue I found at Witt's Barbecue in Springfield. Their family pack number two, which is I think 2 pounds of meat, buns, and a couple of large sides. It's $25.99. It feeds 10. That's only $2.60 a person. So that's getting down real reasonable on a per person basis if you can buy in bulk. So the next part of the spreadsheet here is on this little tool, charged meal cost per person. You can see here that the amounts are just slightly higher than what we have here. So for example, Saturday lunch, Witt's barbecue, $2.60 per person. But we're going to charge $3 per person to account for other stuff we have to buy besides the food, such as drinks and plates and napkins and cups and things of that nature. So that has to be accounted for. So here's where you can decide in this part of the tool how much you're going to charge on a per meal basis, like Dick was mentioning earlier. So this part of the sheet imports in data from the registrations and then merges that with the cost per meal. So for example, here this first line, Andrew Harrington, he signed up to be there overnight on Friday and Saturday night, and he's going to be there on Saturday and Sunday. So his projected Friday dinner and Saturday breakfast cost is $8. Saturday lunch is $3. Saturday dinner and Sunday breakfast is $11. Sunday lunch $3 for a total of $25. So I think all those numbers are real reasonable. And here you have someone that's getting fed 6 meals for $25, and just that's because of the power of bulk purchasing. So that's how much we need to collect from Mr. Harrington to pay for his food for the weekend. Uh, at the top here, it tells you your totals. So right now, or when I at least did the screen capture, there were 20 people signed up for overnighting on Friday. There's 33 signed up for Saturday during the day, 21 overnight Saturday night, and 32 on Sunday. Now keep in mind these totals here do not necessarily reflect how many meals you're going to get, because this people sign up for the Ron checkbox who do not plan to or do not end up staying at the overnight lodging provided by the SAREX. So those numbers there are very uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Unreliable to use for your meal planning numbers. So the next part of the tool is a payment tracking and analysis. So this line is next to the previous slide. So here, once the member has paid, you can put in how much they paid, and then these boxes here populate, indicating how many of which meals have been paid for. And then up top here, you guys can see my mouse moving, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. So up here, it totals how many meals or how many of each meal have been paid for. It also calculates how much money the food unit leader has to work with on a per meal basis. Then it calculates the total food budget. So the more people, um, as the money comes in, these numbers all tick up regardless of who all has signed up for a meal. It just goes by who has paid for a meal. So this goes back to the previous advantage of the prepayment method is we have really good data now to know how many meals to buy, and so that we're not wasting a lot of money, and we're making sure that everyone does get fed. The last thing it does is it calculates a roster for you. I thought this might be pretty cool to use. Someone told me earlier today that at the um, Dayton SAREX, they paid for they paid for lunch, but by the time they got back to they were on a ground team sortie, and by the time they got back to the mission base, all the food was gone. So if we have a list of who has paid for food, then it's going to be a lot easier for someone at the exercise to make sure that no one gets left out like that again, as opposed to just throwing out a big spread of food and saying y'all have at it. So any questions on any of these tools? I'm going to do a live demo next. Ginger?
Yeah, when you give us the list of names, are they going to be done on a day by day or a meal by meal basis? Because then we're going to have to make sure that whoever is coming to us before we let them into the meal area is actually paid.
Yes,
If
that's what That's what this tool right here is. So this is the paid meal roster for each meal. Friday
But
dinner.
I would want to hand it out to whoever is doing registration or the meal person on a day by day basis. So you're not on a meal by meal basis. So you're not inadvertently checking something off in a different meal category.
Right. Yeah, there's a column. If you on the screen here is displayed. Each column corresponds to each of the 6 meals that we would typically serve at a weekend exercise. Then under each meal, there's a list of names as to who has paid for that specific meal, who has signed up for and paid for that specific meal.
Would it help to do tickets also? Different colored tickets.
I'm sure there's situations where that would work best.
Well, here's the problem, and we saw this at Crossville, Andy. Somebody, the food leader, is going to have to also control the food because there were reports at Crossville of multiple bags going to single individuals. We don't know if they were taking them for other people or what the deal was. But
we ran out of bags of food.
Yeah, we ran out of bags of food. And it's got to be a 1-to-1 ratio if we're doing bag lunches.
Yep, you're right. That's definitely a consideration. If you buy a large pizza and you're planning on feeding 4 people with that large pizza, then you have one person who consumes half the pizza. Well,
exactly.
now you get a problem. So
yep.
Yeah,
there needs to be if that's an issue. I think this kind of comes back to the communication thing. Is where it needs to be communicated. It's like, okay, we have enough meals here for one grab and go bag per person, or whatever, 3 slices of pizza per person, or one barbecue sandwich per person, or whatever.
As Ginger just said, you tell that to a growing teenager.
Yep. Yep, that's definitely a challenge. It's something that needs to be considered and planned for.
I work in a jail sometimes, and we can't get the meal counts right. It's going to be an uphill battle. We know exactly who's where, and that still doesn't always work out. So there needs to be some sort of tracking to it, but
I agree. It all comes back to resource availability. Do we have the personnel resource available to staff it at that level? I mean, sometimes the best we can do is have a stack of pizzas delivered to the building, and then let them sort it out. It really just comes down to each situation is different, and what's the optimal solution for each situation. Go ahead, Ginger.
Andy, if you've got a unit food leader who's overall in charge, this would be probably one of the areas where you could use your MSAs. Because they're gophers anyhow. We ship them off to logistics, we ship them off to communications. We could designate for different meals, different cadets that are stationed right at the main site for helping the food leader to distribute the food or watch the food as it comes in and goes out.
I agree. That's an excellent idea. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is go into the actual resource sheet itself. So if you're on Google Drive, you see here now. So I'm up here. I think y'all can see that. No, you can't. So this is drive.google.com, and notice up here in the upper right hand corner, I'm signed in with my TinCap account, and that gets me access to this information. I can type Springfield, and that returns the Springfield SAREX Resource Master Sheet. So that's one way, and that's probably the easiest way to get to this document. And let me share the tab. So here is the data. So these are this resource master sheet contains a lot of information for planning and executing each exercise. And there's one of these in every folder on a per exercise basis. So this is currently everyone who has signed up for the Springfield SAREX. Now at the bottom here is the food unit leader tab. So let me go through this. So here, the yellow boxes are the ones that the user needs to input data into. So let's say instead of um, Whit's barbecue for Saturday lunch, let's say we're going to go with KFC, and a family bucket of chicken costs $50 and it feeds 15 people. So that comes out to $260 per person. Now down here, I'm going to change Sunday lunch to $4 for whatever reason. And eventually, once my spreadsheet catches up, that's going to change this figure here to $4 because $4 corresponds to the Sunday lunch figure. Now, question. Go ahead, Nicole.
Just curious, are they counting into effect all of the beverages and everything else they want to provide, or are they just saying that's just for the food only?
However you want to do it. So this is again a situation where that needs to be accounted for. You know, if there's a stock of cups and plates and napkins at wherever we're doing the exercise, or those are going to be supplied from a food vendor, then you don't have to buy those. But if you don't have those things, then you need to put a little bit of padding in these numbers to account for money to buy those. Now, we could break it down to the cost per napkin, but I think that's going a little bit overboard. All right, so here we have. So right now we've got all these people that are signed up, and over to the right in this total column is how much each of them we think should pay us based on what they told us they were doing. So for example, the first row here we have Andrew Michael Harrington. It looks like Mr. Harrington is going to need all six meals because he's staying Friday night and Saturday night, and also Saturday and Sunday. So Friday and dinner breakfast is $8, and that total, and that includes both Friday dinner and Saturday breakfast. This 4 and 4 here. Saturday lunch we're charging $3. That comes from here on Saturday lunch. Saturday dinner, Sunday breakfast is $11, and that comes from these two numbers, 7 and 4. And then Sunday lunch is $4, and that comes from this figure here for a total of 26. Now, if he pays us, someone types in 26 into the paid column, and then over here it increments all the paid meals, the respective meals that have been paid for that need to be purchased. So if we go, if everyone has paid, let me just quickly do this. So if everyone pays what we think they owe, then here we need 20 dinners for Friday. And that's going to cost $80, or we have $80 available to spend to buy 20 dinners on Friday. Same thing on Saturday breakfast. We've got $80 to spend. Saturday lunches, we need 33 of those. And if after we take up all that money, that's going to come to $99, and so on and so forth. Then here in this tab, or this box, our total food budget is $618. That means we've collected $618, and that's how much we have to spend on food for that exercise. So over here on the right is all the list of names of who has paid for each of those meals. So Friday dinner, we have this list of people, and that's who we're going to buy dinner for. That's who should get dinner. So it should make it very, very easy. Well, easier. It should make it easier to figure out who we're buying food for, how many people we're buying food for, and who should get that food once it's delivered or picked up to the exercise. Now, one additional feature here I want to go into is, let's say, there's a question. William Crossman. Go ahead.
Oh, hey Andy, it's Chip Crossman. Hey, I was just thinking, the table you've got there on the right hand side of the people that have paid
Uh huh.
underneath all the meals, could that be turned into like individual meal coupons you could then print out and give a coupon, with each person in, like, that says the person's name in that meal,
Yeah.
and then that way they could come in and just hand a coupon in and say, "Here's my Friday dinner coupon. I'll take Friday dinner," and
Yeah.
then they know to give it to them.
That'd be pretty easy.
Just just a thought.
Again, it comes back to, do you have the person who has the knowledge and the time to turn that list into coupons and then issue the coupons and then someone to collect the coupons? So that's a great idea. I think that's a great solution. But um, it seems like in CEP, a lot of times our great solutions are limited by some resource that we don't have to implement it. Go ahead, Ginger.
It's
This is
Dick.
Dick. I second what the gentleman just said, and those could be cut and pasted onto a Word document and then handed out at registration by your MSA. So the person would get maybe a sheet with just one or two meals out, like Mr. Baker or whatever, Glenn Baker. And some of the people who are getting six meals would get six chits printed out on the thing, and they could just sit there with a steel ruler and cut them off.
Yep, I like that. That's a good idea.
Thank you.
Okay, one more feature I want to talk about here is, let's say let's take this person, Tucker Kane, for example. Let's say that Tucker Kane is coming in late. He's coming in Friday night, but he's not going to be there in time for dinner. So he's not gonna pay for he's not gonna eat dinner, so he doesn't want to pay for dinner. And we say, okay, that's fine. So take $4. We figure you owe us 26, but you're not eating dinner, which is four. So take off $4, and that he's going to pay $22. So now the spreadsheet tool here has the ability to detect when the paid amount is different from the total amount. So now the spreadsheet recognizes that they paid something, and it highlights that cell saying, hey, something's going on here. At that point, then the user will go in and manually, and it tells you, hey, you're overriding a formula by doing this. Are you sure you want to do this? And you click OK. So then the user would manually go in and toggle which meals that person has paid for. So now they've paid $22, and if you noticed, so right now total meals 19. If I go in here and add this one, now total meals is 20. So I can manually toggle which which of the meals that $22 is paying for. So once again, that gives us good data to make good decisions on who to buy food for and how much money we have available to purchase that food for the group. So the next part of this conundrum is the payment part. So this list here, uh, the registration data and the totals, this part here would get sent out to the sign up list saying, hey, you signed up for the exercise. Here's where we're going to provide meals. Here are the meals that we think that you're going to need or you're going to want. If you do want these meals, then send us the indicated amount at this link. And that could be a PayPal link, that could be a Venmo, Apple Pay, whatever we come up with on the finance side to accept payments. And then there's probably a deadline for each meal. Again, this is on a case by case basis, just depending on who we're providing meals for. So like, okay, you owe us this much money by this date. We need this much time to coordinate with our vendors. If you're not paid, then we're not going to buy food for you. So Wing Finance then provides a list of who's paid and how much they've paid to the SAREX food unit leader, who then updates the spreadsheet, these columns over here. So if we just, for example, we might end up with something that looks like this. So these people have paid. The ones who are there's a blank here have not paid, and then up here at the top is our total food quantities and total food budgets per meal. Okay, Ginger, go ahead.
Okay, speaking as a squadron finance officer, I strongly would recommend that the individual person in Squadron X puts the money in with the squadron finance officer. They write out their check or they give the squadron finance officer cash for that activity. The finance officer puts the money in a wing banking account, and on the advice deposit form, there's space to put all that information so that when the wing banker gets that money, they'll know what it's for and they can apply it. And put your squadron finance officers to work, and this should cut down about 90% of passing money through Wing or doing it through PayPal or things like that.
What I don't quite understand what you're suggesting. What's the time frame on this happening, Dick?
Well, let's say you have to, let's say you're having activity on the uh, 25th, 26th, and 27th of August. You make your cutoff 2 weeks before that.
Okay.
At the squadron meeting at Squadron X, anybody who's going will give that money to the finance officer. They make a notification or they fill out that wing advance checking form, the deposit form.
The
That money,
deposit advice.
yeah, deposit wise. The wing or squadron finance officer does two things. Number one, they transmit that wing deposit advice to the wing. Number two, they deposit it the next day at the bank. Hopefully, the squadron would have the money in their checking account to cover it. If they don't, then let them do the deposit first and then put the device in to cover the deposit. Or the wing could float the money. But I would suggest running the money through the squadrons.
Yeah, I hadn't considered that, but I think that's a good idea too. Is put the payment and the deposit burden on the squadrons,
Yeah,
or not maybe not exclusively, but have that to be a payment option. If somebody doesn't want to pay with a credit card online, they can just
And they
give
would
that money to their squadron finance officer, and then the squadron finance officer deposits that into the wing account.
right.
Um, the
And the
question
squadron,
I would have as a wing finance officer myself is how those squadron deposits get annotated to go towards um, a specific exercise.
you provide the mission number and they can put it at the top of the form.
Yeah, but I'm not sure how that gets done in QuickBooks. I'm not sure if it's possible to do
Oh,
that in QuickBooks.
well,
you can't you just write the name?
that's another situation. I don't know QuickBooks. I've never used them.
Yeah. Um, Bob
Sorry.
Freese, are you on? Or Bill Cumbo? Yeah, that's a good question for QuickBooks. Um, it can probably be done. I just don't know how off the top of my head.
You,
But yeah,
you
that's a
can
good suggestion. I like that.
you can definitely notate that in QuickBooks. Absolutely, 100%.
How is that done?
You could do it different ways, but within QuickBooks, you have the ability to create. I don't know what you would call it, but you can create little guys that when you deposit money, it specifically notates that it goes towards that event. So it's really easy to kind of keep track of it.
Okay.
Andy,
Cool.
this is Bruce. Basically, what you'd have to do is to set up kind of like an account for each SAREX, and then any monies that are supposed to, for food, for example, would have to go into that SAREX account. And it would be a wing account, not a unit account.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, we'd have to do the same thing for any money that came in through PayPal or Venmo or something like that as well. So
Right.
I guess that problem exists regardless of how the payments are collected. So it would that the solution should apply to all the payment collections regardless of the method that those payments were made. But yeah, that's good. That's really good. Um, all right. So that's all I have for my presentation. What what else do you guys want to talk about? What other ideas do
Andy,
y'all have?
Andy, do you have any idea how many people it would take to manage this? Let's just assume we've got 40 participants for the exercise. Nice round number.
Well, it depends. That's kind of my go-to answer.
Yeah.
Um, are you gonna buy food from a professional caterer and have them deliver it, or are we gonna buy groceries and cook the food? Yeah, I think that's kind of the first question. Um, because just ordering, getting on whatever, some, whoever barbecue.com and placing an order is pretty easy if you've got the money and if you've got a payment method, which Wing credit card is always available for this kind of thing. Just placing an order on a caterer and arranging a pickup time is pretty easy. But when you get to a situation where you've got ground teams that are not co-located with the main operation, you've got air crews who are out for lunch, that you want to make sure that not all the food gets eaten before they get back. You've got a situation where all the pitfalls that we've talked about, the more pitfalls that you want to or have to deal with, I think the more personnel resources it's going to take to handle that. Right?
Yeah, I was just, yeah, I guess it really depends on how you want to set up the food service. Um, I
I
think
mean,
the worst case would be,
give me a
well, the
credit
best
card
best
and
case.
tell me how many people I need to feed, and I can have it done in
Yeah,
5 minutes. And
yeah, but then you still need people to check people coming in to eat and make sure that they're authorized to have a meal.
yeah,
Um, Collecting the money, making sure that's taken care of. Um, Clean up. There's, I know we've got MSAs, and hopefully we've got enough of them to help with that.
yeah, every
Yeah,
every situation is different. It just depends
yeah.
on how much we want to do, how much we can do. Ginger?
Andy, couple thoughts. The food manager or the food unit leader or whatever you want to call them should be somebody from that local area so they know what resources are available. Uh, Food pantry or the quick food services. So he or she then would be able to give you a breakdown relatively quick. Once they have the numbers and the mission is set up to go on Friday, then they can probably go out and get whatever they need at that point for that first meal and then work it meal by meal. And you probably would only need a couple MSAs. The food unit leader would be the overall responsible person, designate a, a cadet for checking them in, and all the MSAs in-house would then work with cleanup and setup.
Andy, this is Dick. One thing I would strongly suggest, because I'm still an old-fashioned paper guy, everybody brings a laptop, but nobody brings a working printer. I would suggest in a situation like that at the SAREX, if somebody brings a working printer to plug into a laptop, either I'm not even in favor of wireless. I'm in favor of just plugging in with a serial cable and just as you need to print this stuff off on the spot, you've got a good, whether it's a Hewlett Packard or dot matrix printer, a $99 one from Walmart or whatever. Even if we wear it out on the exercise, I suggest that we have a available working printer that's directly connected to the PC or any PC there.
Yeah, working printers are always a good thing. Go ahead, Chip.
So I guess I'm not very familiar with it from a resource perspective, but do we have access to MREs that we could get ahead of time and just have it at the base, just for the people that show up or that miss a meal, or just kind of just have it a backup option? I don't know if that's possible.
I'm not aware of a stock of MREs that we currently are in possession of, but
Okay.
I know they can be purchased like anything else can be with money. All it
They're
takes is money.
very expensive, Mr. Crossman. I was looking at MREs, and commercially, they don't come cheap. In fact, some of them are ahead of the expectations that Andy worked out in the budget. And a lot of people will not eat them.
All right, what else y'all got? I got 8:37. I didn't want this to go in much more than an hour. So Jason DeMark has asked me to kind of pre-coordinate food for the Springfield SAREX. I won't be able to be there. So this is what I'm going to try and do as far as querying who wants what meals, and then provide them payment instructions on how to prepay for the meals. Then I'll provide a list to the exercise staff, to the IC, on how much money they have and how many meals they should buy for each of the 6 meals across the weekend.
I greatly appreciate that, Andy. Is Connie Kelly still doing the, or I'm sorry, Rosemary doing the FUL, correct?
I'm not aware.
I think I think Colonel Hackney is set to be the FUL. I haven't been able to get in touch with her since the last planning meeting, but I'm hoping she's going to be there tomorrow to coordinate. So,
Okay. So like anything, we'll do it. We'll try it, and if we stumble, then we'll try and figure out a better way to do it the next time. Mistakes is how we learn.
I'd rather learn with mistakes in an exercise than in a real world situation.
Exactly. It's amazing how much I've learned over the years from screwing it up the first 4 times.
Well, there was something else you did mention, and I was kind of eyeballing this myself. This is Eric from Millington, but the airport's about 7 minutes from all the food, and I know you want to implement this on this one and future SAREXs. Um, my thought is, just because it is so close, and you did hit a point, and it's been done the last 2 SAREXs I was on, is while we were out in the field, we just stopped and ate lunch real quick and then jumped back in. When we went back in to refit, check in, do everything, the air crews grabbed the vans, went out, had lunch. It worked fairly well. I mean, there was a little bit of a cross, but overall, in that particular case, and then Rosemary was doing the breakfast. She found some donors and some other folks, and I hadn't had a chance, but I was going to suggest talking with some other unit commanders, maybe, floating her some money, because I know she puts a lot out of her pocket as well at every SAREX. But that's just something I've seen, especially at this one with food being so close versus other ones where this really would be a much better option. But again, just throwing that out there.
Yeah, a lot of people pay for things out of their own pockets, and the intention is for nobody to have to do that. But in order to reimburse them, we need to have a check request with receipts. A lot of people, I can't get them to do that, to put that in, but that's always available. Especially for expenses that are pre-coordinated, like food for SAREXs.
I mean, especially if we all jumped in and pitched in, that would really drop the cost and not take a huge hit on each unit.
Well, the goal of this is to get it to be revenue neutral through the payment system.
Understood. Just trial and error is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't want any unit or any person to have to be at risk of not getting made whole any expenditures they may have made at for an exercise for these types of payments. All right. I'll be sending out an email afterwards with the slide deck I used for this evening's presentation, and also a recording that we're about to wrap up. So we'll keep keep things in mind. Thanks everybody for your ideas and for your contributions. And this is, well, I think of this as an evolving process, an evolving procedure, where every time we do it, we learn something. What works better, what didn't really work, what could have gone different, and just keep getting better and better. The more we do it, the more we learn. Go ahead, Ginger.
This is Dick. The original attachment you sent out today, we couldn't open. Could you send this thing out as a PDF format?
What attachment are you talking about?
In your original email today, there was an attachment, and every time I tried to open the attachment, it failed.
I'm not sure which email you're talking about, Dick. Remind me.
Okay, sent here on the back. I'm looking at the email now.
I sent out a lot of email.
I think it had to do with your slide presentation.
Yeah. Did you make an attachment of the slides you were using tonight?
No.
Oh,
Okay, then something got messed up in the email then.
Okay. All right. Colonel Bersari, do you have anything you would like to say in closing?
Just that everybody had a lot of good ideas, and I think this is a great plan moving forward. Again, this only works if we have enough people to get it done. So please tell folks in your squadrons and your groups and people around you how wonderful it is to support these SAREXs and how personally rewarded you feel. I thank you all for coming out and spending the time on this. I think we're starting to tweak details, which is a really good place to be. Thank you.
Thanks all. You have a good night.